And we are
What
back.
are we doing?
Oh.
We are back.
Yes, we are
Oh, I
back.
thought you just had me in this room as in prison here.
Right.
Yes,
This
I
is
thought this was a prison.
what Gus considers the holy film room.
No, I thought it was the prison dungeon to which I was assigned, like the prison of Zenda. You see, that it's hell. All I'm surrounded by is reels and reels of movie motion pictures, but I can't
Watch them.
look at them because I don't have any projectors.
Right. But yes, we are back.
Yes, it is good to be back.
And this time we are talking about, Gus wanted to talk about the new Western.
Yeah, I did. I've been looking and thinking about it for a while because, one, I love Westerns.
Mm-hmm.
I love the genre. And I grew up with the genre. And I've watched it go through many, many changes and phases. And then watch it virtually disappear. And it seems to be attempting to sneak its way back. And, of course, each time the Western goes into a cycle, when it returns, it, like what all drama is supposed to do or does, it reflects the times from which it emerges or re-emerges.
For sure.
So that's why I'm interested. What's your take on this?
Well, I do think it seems like it's more active right now than it has been for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It definitely, the early 2000s, you know what I mean?
Yes,
in the
yes.
90s, there would be a Western here and there, Tombstone, Wyatt Earp, right? But right now, you know, we've got series like Hell on Wheels and Westworld, and there was 4 or 5 Westerns, maybe more, that hit theaters this year.
Right,
And then there's a whole bunch that I can't comment on at all that are being made for, VOD, straight to Netflix.
Right.
There's some with a country singer named Trace Adkins. He's remade The Virginian. He seems to be doing one every year. I can't comment on those at all. He's almost doing kind of like a Tom Selleck, Sam Elliott type thing.
But it points to the fact that
it's
the
alive.
Western is getting sort of a resurgence.
And, I haven't thought a whole lot about how it reflects our time. The main thing that I thought about before we discussed it was, with these new Westerns, like, what categories do they fit in? And I kind of came up with some categories that I thought they fit into. One would be the Hollywood output, right, which would be films like 310 to Yuma, because I'm considering the new Western probably everything 21st century, back to 2000, right, the last 15 years or so, and that's stretching it a little bit, but so 310 to Yuma, Magnificent Seven, even something like Jane Got a Gun with Natalie Portman, I see as the Hollywood ones. And then I saw what I would call the somewhat more independent, but they're just working in the traditional style. So I considered this films like Appaloosa, directed by Ed Harris, and a film I didn't like very much, The Homesman, directed by Tommy Lee Jones. But it seems like they're trying to do what Hawks and Ford were doing. Then you have...
And we have to, I want to interject, the very fact that they're doing it indicates a labor of love.
Right.
Because there's no real demand for it.
For sure. And those guys were pretty much the pioneers of what I think is being more frequent right now. Because when Ed Harris and Tommy Lee Jones, when they were doing their first... when Ed Harris did Appaloosa, the Western was struggling and it wasn't really taking hold like it is right now. Then you have what I would consider to be the Western that takes place in modern day. So films like Tommy Lee Jones's The Three Burials of Melquiades, Estrada, and even you could say Hell or High Water that came out this year. Films that maybe they aren't completely Westerns, but they're certainly very informed by the genre.
Exactly.
And then the last category, and my favorite, is the independents that are pushing the genre in new directions. And that would be films like Slow West and Bone Tomahawk are the two main ones that I see as
no, you're totally right.
And those are the exciting ones, and if some of the other ones are the A pictures, if we talk in terms of like the old cinema days, if those are the A pictures, these are the B pictures that are always better and more interesting than the A pictures. So those are the Fords, and these are the Bedekers. So that's or whatever, the Bedekers, the Andre Dutas, the side guys that are doing really quirky stuff with the genre. So that was the way I looked at it. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I actually narrowed down the scope of what we're going to talk about to the last 5 years. But I think you're right. You had sort of this foundational setup that was beginning to happen with the films you talked about. And we've seen them together, a lot of them.
Right.
Appaloosa and the Homesman and things like that. And so what I did, I actually made a little list because I've seen a number of them and tried to sort of compare a little bit.
Right.
And some aren't. In addition to what you were talking about, where you say, you broke them down into independents, some coming out of Hollywood. One of the things that we're seeing is actually several films coming out of New Zealand, like Slow West, Spain, places like that.
Right.
In a way, it echoes back to the spaghetti western days. Now, the spaghetti western, they shot it in their terrain, which looked, or at least double for our American West, utilizing the influence of Ford and people like that. With these new films, they're all striking out in new directions with it. They're dealing with foreigners as foreigners within the West. So I've listed a group of them. I made a list, and so I'll look at, because I didn't put them according to dates, because 2014, the Homesman came out.
Right.
And one of the things when I said they reflect their own times is the whole Homesman, whether we like it, loved it or not. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it absolutely. It has a feminist perspective, which reflects some of the concerns of these times, which I think is very nice.
True.
Effectively, in that film, Hilary Swank is really the heroine or the principal protagonist of the film. The other I was talking about and I've seen is The Salvation. That's the one with Mads Mikkelsen and Eva Green.
And that was made in Denmark, or at
least
by
South
Danish?
Africa.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was. I wrote down where it was filmed.
Cool.
It's a Danish director, and they shot it in South Africa. One of the interesting things in the casting is that as soon as I saw the film, I thought, it's a reunion for Eva Green and Mads Mikkelsen from the Bond movie.
Oh, right.
They were yes. And so it's a completely different kind of thing.
Right.
But one of the other things we're discovering or we're finding is how fascinated foreigners are with our West. They always have been. There was a while in the 60s where they made a series of Westerns because Edgar Wallace, he was a well-known mystery writer, and he wrote a number of mysteries, but then he wrote a number of Westerns in quotes, an imagined West, right?
Okay.
And he was even called Germany's Zane Grey.
Okay, interesting.
And the main character he wrote about was a Indian scout called Old Shatterhand. And they made several films starring Stuart Granger at the time. And then they even spun off sequels to tell you how popular they were with Lex Barker.
Okay.
And they hardly got released in the United States, but they were popular in Germany, but all over Europe as well. And so we're seeing a little bit of a reflection of that happening again with the films. Then in 2015, we got The Forsaken. Interesting film. It was one of the straight-to-video films. I saw it.
With the Sutherlands, Kiefer Sutherland and
his father, and Demi Moore. Yeah,
okay, she's in it?
Yes,
I did not know
that. She does a nice job in it. When I said so, it was nice to see her for one thing, but she brought a nice weight to the character. And this one was shot in Alberta, Canada. Okay. Okay. So, and then we had Slow West. Mm-hmm. And we saw Slow West together.
Yes.
And that one was filmed on the South Island of New Zealand.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
And of course, and they said one of the driving forces for that was that the star, Michael Fassbender, wanted to do a Western. Mm-hmm. You see? That's why I said Richard Harris. What was the one where he played A Man Called Horse?
Right.
Yeah. The one you talk about on in your interviews with Mitch Ryan.
Monty Walsh?
No, the one with Oliver Reed.
The Hunting Party.
Yes, The Hunting Party. Oliver Reed, a Britisher, again, wants to play Western. So you get this series of guys who...
A lot of these are actor-driven.
Yeah,
very much. Not to skip ahead, but the director of In the Valley of Violence was saying that it's easier to get someone like John Travolta because it's a Western. Yes, and everybody wants to be in a Western. And this is their shot, so they take a lower pay cut or whatever to do it. And then even someone like we talked about a lot of the films that we're talking about, like Ed Harris is generating it. Mm-hmm. Tommy Lee Jones is generating. They're very, I think even Natalie Portman, she's the one that's pushing the Western. So,
and I think that's wonderful. I love it.
It's not as much the actor. No. I mean, the directors.
Or the producer.
Days, yeah.
No, it's really the actors who want to do it. One, actors love to.
Right.
Get in cowboy garb.
Exactly, yeah.
But also, I think, the legendary status of the genre is what attracts. I mean, one of our biggest stars was John Wayne. I was reading the New York Times review of The Magnificent Seven, the new one. And the very first thing that and a reviewer whose reviews I read all the time and whose opinions I respect, she immediately starts out by saying Denzel Washington is now our new John Wayne, and then proceeds from there to review the film.
Gotcha.
And so she sets him in an iconic position in order to then leverage what she wants to say about the film.
Right, that makes sense.
Like that. Then I have Bone Tomahawk here. And that was shot in Southern California. One of the few. Now, because why I listed where they were shot is because I was looking for a film that was actually shot in Texas, where most of them are located.
Most of them are set, yeah.
Yeah, that was shot in Southern California for budgetary reasons, etc. Like that. The distinction, and that is my favorite of all the ones on this list, and we talk about how much we like that film. The distinction that the critics seem to want to make with this is that it's a genuine horror Western.
Right.
And I dispute that a little bit, but I see where they're coming from.
Right.
Yeah, I think the effect of it, because it scares you, makes them think it's horror, but I think it's not.
Well, I think to me, whatever, the primary genre of Bone Tomahawk is Western, right?
Absolutely.
If it has horror elements, it's still mostly a Western, and really the horror elements take up only maybe a third of the picture, period, and most of it is very much in the style of traditional Westerns with this new tweak to it.
Well, it's a Searchers almost.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, even though the world that is created with these cannibals is somewhat otherworldly, they are humans. And we talked about that, not to get sidetracked, but with the horror genre, they're not monsters. They are like a tribe of Native Americans who became cannibals. And just like Jaws is not a horror film, Bone Tomahawk, to me, is not a horror film. So,
I agree.
And I think that those movies are actually very similar. In the sense that they approach, it's all character driven, and you get to know these guys, and the guys end up in a situation where they're struggling for survival. So,
and it points out something else that has always been true of the Western, is that it is the most flexible of genres.
Right. Because
you have horror Westerns, you have musical Westerns, you have comic Westerns, you've got opera, Western operas, you got everything in the West, sci-fi Westerns.
Right.
And so Bone Tomahawk actually just embraces that and proves the flexibility, the durability of this particular genre. And the genre that is really called an original American genre, because virtually all the genres existed before America became a nation, but you didn't have Westerns. And the settling of the American West created that genre right out of the dime novels, etc.
Right.
And that's one of the things I think that proves its durability, is because of that. The next film that I looked at and thought about was The Hateful Eight.
Which I haven't seen.
Oh, you haven't seen it. It's a film that I liked the first third of until it became, to me, and Tarantino says different. It became to me Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. The mystery aspect of the way the plot unfolds is very similar to Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. But the beginning and the Panavision 70 photography, particularly of the outdoor scenes, are some of the most breathtaking I've ever witnessed on film. So that is something. I mean, there's a kudos for that. And I'm glad that Tarantino, being a film buff, decided to embrace the Western a little bit. Because whether he does it to my full satisfaction or not, it brings it back to a larger audience and perhaps will encourage more producers to make Westerns.
I think my frustration, the reason that I didn't see it is, after seeing Django, which is also a Western, a take on the Western, he can't do anything, he can't do anything even semi-straight anymore, And what I mean by that is something like Jackie Brown, where it's got his flair, but it is just Jackie Brown. It is just the crime film, pulp film Jackie Brown, And he's got to add all of his self-conscious little things to it. So even though it puts the, Western back in people's minds, I think that it frustrates me too much to watch his work. And to me, it takes attention away from great movies like Bone Tomahawk. They come out at the same time, right? Hateful Eight gets all the interest, and then Bone Tomahawk will eventually become a cult hit, I think. But
I think, I think it could become a midnight movie.
Right.
One of those that you play only on weekends, and people, because word of mouth, I think, would make it.
Yeah.
The interesting thing talking about Hateful Eight and Bone Tomahawk is they share the actor.
Right.
Because Kurt Russell is in both, and he's terrific in both.
Right. And I haven't seen Hateful Eight, so I haven't.
And he looks slightly different. He's fully bearded in both, but he looks slightly different.
That's interesting.
He anchors both films very, very well. Jane Got Her Gun.
Okay.
And that's another, in quotes, feminist Western.
Right.
As you say. And you said it was driven pretty much by Natalie Portman to get made. It's considered kind of a loose remake of a film that came out in the 60s that I liked, and I don't think it got much play. And that was a film called Honey Calder, starring Raquel Welch.
Okay.
And what I also saw when I saw that were echoes of that film that I like also, Western, The Quick and the Dead, the one with Sharon Stone.
Yeah.
Because the subtext or subplot to that very much echoes Jane Got Her Gun, or Jane Got Her Gun echoes that.
Yeah.
So that's another one that came out last year?
Earlier this year, actually.
Earlier 2016.
It was,
that's right. Yes.
It was delayed for a long time and had all those production issues. I liked it a lot more than the critics did, and I specifically thought that Ewan McGregor was very good as the villain. He was better than either of the leads to me. And the film just it never the script wasn't there. But you could tell that they had some good elements to play with, but the script just wasn't there to back up everything. So
and one of the problems is I agree with you that the critics really were harder on the film than it deserved. The next one I have is In the Valley of Violence. You haven't seen that.
Still haven't seen it.
Yeah. I wasn't crazy about it, but I loved the presence of John Travolta in it.
And you said he should have been in more of it.
Yes, I wish he had more scenes. He really only has about 3 or 4 scenes in the film. But again, after all these years in movies, he's almost 40 years in movies, he's a terrific presence, and he anchors films. He anchors films with a kind of self-assurance and confidence that when he walks on the screen, he's not pushing things.
Right.
He's just there. In that way, he's in his, I'll call it that, although I guess they're both at the same age range, his Jeff Bridges phase, where Bridges just kind of walks in, he's there and you can't help but pay attention, and Bridges does that so well in Hell or High Water. Oh, yeah. He just is there. And exactly. Like, wow. And you just can't keep your eye off him. Right. Like that. Well, Travolta does the same thing, except not enough.
Interesting. Something just occurred to me real quick to interject. You had said Kurt Russell, in the same year, shares both Hateful Eight and Bone Tomahawk.
Right.
Well, it's more evidence that the Western is really cooking, to me, is that last year you have Kurt Russell in 2 Westerns. This year you have Ethan Hawke in 2 Westerns.
Right.
And I'm like, when not only Westerns are being made, but actors are in more than one a year, you really,
yes, you're beginning to see really things beginning to happen because, yes, he's in the Valley of Violence, which was made prior to the Magnificent Seven, which is the next one on my list.
Yeah.
But it was released after. I saw the Magnificent Seven last night because I thought I wanted to talk about it because I had seen the original Seven Samurais 100 years ago, and then I remember a friend and I went to see the Western remake with Yul Brynner, and we came out humming the music, and then we were really talking about, we didn't know there'd be remakes. But we kept saying, we'd love to see more of these guys. And of course, there were 4 remakes of that particular Magnificent Seven. So I went to see this one last night.
Yeah. And what did you think about it?
I wasn't crazy about it. I thought there were a lot of opportunities missed. It is, of all of them, except for the films I listed here, except for the Hateful Eight, it is the most opulent production. It's large. You could see a lot of money was spent on it. It had a pretty good cast, not a great cast. They weren't as distinctive as the cast with Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen, James Coburn, Charles Bronson, Robert Vaughn. I mean, that was an iconic cast. This cast had Chris Pratt, who was quite good. Denzel, of course. You had Ethan Hawke. You had Vince D'Onofrio. And you had a few others that kind of made their presence felt. I felt they were undermined by the lack of a good script. Really, it just was, to me, a one-note script. And I felt, unfortunately, that the villain was played, because I thought he was miscast. I don't think he gave a bad performance, by Peter Sarsgaard. He just didn't have the heft. I really wanted Gene Hackman of The Quick and the Dead. When he comes in.
Yeah, or Daniel Day-Lewis from Gangs of New York.
Yes, that kind of big bad guy, so that when you get this group of 7 who we know already, they have something formidable to oppose. And in this case, the casting, to me, it wasn't that. Peter Sarsgaard wasn't formidable, an opponent in that sense. He's just not that kind of actor. And so I was very disappointed in that. What is interesting is the way they end the film. It doesn't particularly give you the impression, of course, Hollywood can change their mind anytime they like, but it doesn't give you the impression that they think that they want to make a sequel, which I thought was kind of nice.
No, that's good. That's refreshing these days.
Looking to the dollars.
Because they're always franchise-minded,
Exactly, and they sort of pay tribute to who they were. And that was it, like that. And so that was the last of the films on my list. There is one coming called Brimstone.
Yeah, with Guy Pearce.
Right. And I've looked at previews of it, and again, it's a feminist-driven Western. Dakota Fanning is really the lead in it. Guy Pearce is the bad guy.
Yeah.
You saw the same preview I saw.
I did, yeah.
And that one, that was shot in Spain, Germany, Austria, and Hungary.
Wow.
Okay? Because of budgetary concerns.
And I think the director is not an American, pretty sure.
The director is a guy named Martin Koolhoven. And so he's Netherlands. He's from Denmark.
Okay.
Not Denmark, but Holland.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking to that. That played at the Venice Film Festival. The reviews were interesting.
They were mixed, yeah.
But again, it echoes the fact that not only we are interested in the resurgence of the Western, but here are other people wanting to do it. And so that's why I asked for this as a subject, because my favorite genre Westerns and musicals. I'll turn cartwheels if musicals come back.
What about film noir?
Oh, I love noir too, but I want musicals to come back.
Well, they might. It's more popular with La La Land coming out. Maybe. Regardless whether it's good or not, if it does well, that's all it takes is that something has to do well, and then it sets.
And then other people start.
And that's the only good thing I can think of at all about Magnificent Seven, having not seen it, is at least it made some money. Yes. So hopefully it encourages more, and those films will be better than it. And hopefully even for the smaller level, financiers will say, well, Westerns make money, so let's finance some more independent films. Brimstone looks like it's in the tradition more it falls into the category of Bone Tomahawk and Slow West, of pushing the genre into another direction, which makes it exciting for me. Also, this hasn't started shooting yet, and I hope it comes together, is John Sayles is talking about making a Django movie.
I read about that.
And that just intrigues me because of just the pieces, right? And he's always, even the films that he's missed on are worth watching.
Absolutely.
He's always an interesting filmmaker, very smart writer, has the background of writing genre movies for Corman, but also this totally different sensibility as a director. So to me, it sounds like those two might come together for something really interesting with Django.
And then we can talk about one other director that is looking at a Western.
Which one? Oh, me.
It's called Bad Blood Country.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yes. So,
and the idea with that, because some people have read it already.
I've read the script, twice, three times?
Yeah, you've read it.
And I read the original story from which you got it.
And some people have read it and go, oh, I don't see this really as a Western. And I would disagree because, people can define the Western in different ways. Yeah. But I would say that the main thing that defines a Western is sort of this question of justice, right? And that's what real Westerns that have meat to them have underneath it, which is what I think that Hell or High Water may qualify. Because it's this idea of what is justice and what is right and wrong, and the struggle between the outlaw and the good. Obviously, that would expand the genre to many different films, but you can argue that a movie like Sean Connery, Outland, is High Noon in Space.
Exactly.
And, it is kind of a Western. It's on the frontier, and they play by all the rules of the genre.
What they wear is Western wear, and the period.
Right.
It's what, 18... What's the period?
Which film?
Blood Country.
Oh, Blood Country, yes. It's 1884.
Yeah.
So, it's horses, guns, but more than that, I think the content of it has elements of the Western. So I see it as, he'll probably never know that my film exists, but Tarantino said that he wanted to make a Southern, when he made, instead of a Western, Southern with Django.
Right.
Well, I think he totally screwed it up, right? So here I am
don't
to
sugarcoat
make...
your opinion,
right, exactly,
okay?
yeah. In my opinion, I'm here to right the wrongs and make a real Southern, right? Yes. So I'm in competition with Tarantino.
Okay.
And that'll be fun because eventually, as you know, I want to do a project where we make 12 Western features in 12 months. Many of them have been written, still conceptualizing that and figuring out how to do it. And I hope that just because what we discussed, that actors get so passionate about the Western, I'm hoping that is really the avenue I can take with that project, is to attract an actor to each of those 12 Westerns who's always wanted to be in one.
Well, let's go back to Blood Country. So I've read the scripts. You are in what? And we actually looked for locations a little bit when I was in Mississippi with you. So I'm in
pre-production.
The phase of pre-production. And how long do you think that's going to take?
We start shooting March 13th.
The film?
Yeah.
And so we're talking about men, horses, costumes.
Everything.
Everything.
The nice thing about Mississippi is that there's a lot of old stuff left in Mississippi. You know, as you saw.
Yeah, I was saying that town of Rodney.
More so, I think, than out here in Arizona. I mean, there are a lot of things here that are good for Westerns, right? Oh, we need to talk about Tombstone-Rashomon, too. Okay. Let's touch on that a little bit. But anyway, there's a lot left in Mississippi like that. And there's a lot of Civil War reenactments, and I might be able to use those people and use some of their clothes, since this is right after the Civil War. Not uniforms, but that kind of thing. So, I'm casting. I'm currently casting and trying to location scout without actually being in Mississippi. So that's always difficult, but I'm trying to get people on the ground there that can help me out. So it's
we forgot about Tombstone-Rashomon. You have to talk about it because I haven't been around it. I read the script.
I thought that was definitely, obviously that's appropriate because Alex Cox making this Western this year,
right,
and recently releasing a work in progress cut of the film in Tucson. I've seen a cut of the film, and in terms of reflecting its times, you know, he's basically using the Wyatt Earp story, but telling it via the frame of the Rashomon story, which was done by Kurosawa, which is also an interesting connection because Magnificent Seven comes from Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, and this comes from Kurosawa's Rashomon. So the film.
Also, where it reflects its time is that the tone of it, based on the way he's doing it, the Rashomon style, is journalistic. Because I was saying, we need 3 witnesses to verify a fact.
Exactly.
And so we're going across many. We're not being told a story from one point of view anymore.
Right.
We're being told from multiple points of view.
And it's a clever idea because he also has sort of the idea that a documentary crew from the future has gone into the past, and you're actually interviewing these people, right? So you're sitting down with Wyatt Earp or Doc or what's his name, Ike Clanton, and you're hearing and you hear the interviewer asking them these questions.
So he's bracketing 2 genres,
right? And it also reflects its time, I think, for Alex. Not trying to speak for him, but our conversations, I think that he is playing with the age-old conflict between cops and outlaws. And you see that on the news constantly, and sort of misunderstandings and conflicts. Who shot first? Who was wrong? Who was right? And that to me is very much what Tombstone-Rashomon is about. So anyway, that's another interesting film, and I'm glad that I was a part of it. I'm glad that it's out there, and hopefully it encourages more people to make films on that level too, with local casts only, westerns on that level.
So we have a potpourri of westerns
that
are either out and around or on their way.
Right, and there's so many, like I said, that I haven't really even dug into. I mean, as far as I know, these Trace Adkins country star westerns might be as good as the Randolph Scott westerns.
Exactly,
I'm not, but I haven't dug into it. And Westworld, the show, I've only heard good things about.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
So, and Ed Harris is in that, which attracts me to it. So there's just so many. It is an exciting time for the genre, and hopefully it just continues to roll out. Oh, one last note. The one person that I hope makes a Western is Mel Gibson.
Yes.
The reason for this is that he has consistently said over the years that one of his favorite movies, period, is The Big Country. Now, not a lot of people say that. Not a lot of people even remember The Big Country. And it's one of the best Westerns ever made. It's got a large scope, just like all of Gibson's films, and that makes me go, please, Mel, do a Western next. I think he'd have a real interesting flair for it.
It's interesting you say that because last night, about halfway through The Magnificent Seven, that's all I kept thinking is, gee, I wish Mel Gibson had directed this.
Right.
Because I just felt he'd have brought more grit. He would have just made it feel more authentic. As I said, this version of The Magnificent Seven, while not absolutely terrible, just struck me as a Vanity Fair magazine version of the story.
Yeah. So he's one that I'd like to do. I don't think Scorsese will ever make a Western, but I wish he would, because even though he's not organic to the genre, he understands it so well. Apparently, I've heard, this may be totally bogus, but he doesn't want to deal with the horses. That's what I heard. I think Spielberg could make a very interesting Western on a larger scope. I'd like to see Tom Cruise be in a Western.
Well, he was considered, or he was considering, and I guess worked on a development of it, but then it never came to fruition.
Yeah. So, anyway, those are some pipe dreams.
Yes, pipe dreams. Until next time.
Any last thoughts? Or?
No, I just want people to support the Western, and I'm going to make one special plea, and that is Bone Tomahawk. I've now gotten copies I sent to my brother in St. Thomas, and he showed it to friends, and everybody was absolutely awed by the film. The other person I sent it to was Douglas Turner Ward in New York, and Doug just said in his inevitable way, "God damn, I love that film," and I don't want to use this language, but he said, "I've been showing it to everybody just so they can see and experience this goddamn thing."
That's great.
I'm hoping anybody watching this, go out and watch Bone Tomahawk. I think you're in for an interesting experience in film watching.
You're like a missionary for Bone Tomahawk.
Yes, this is my job.
You're spreading the gospel of
Bone
Tomahawk.
Tomahawk. That's my job.
All right. Well, we'll see you when we see you.
Yes.
And
hopefully that'll be soon.
Yes. Maybe catching up on the best films of the year.
Yeah, because you're going away.
Yes.
And
I'll be making a kung fu movie in Colorado.
Right, and then you'll be back.
I'll come back.
Oh, you'll come back. When you come back?
Late December.
Oh, okay. That's when we can look at the best of the year.
Sounds good.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Right.